So I'm here. I am in the place. Just in case you're wondering, we got about one more minute trying to verify one little bit of information before I get cranking. So let's get that tune one more time. Just hang on in there. While I fix this temporary. I'm trying to get the live stream on the actual Carvel Monroe page. Seems like there is something we have to switch over real quick. So bear with me. Live stream difficulties be like that. Yeah, baby. Alright, I fixed it. How y'all doing on this Thursday morning? For those of you who are watching it live, Thursday morning, 9 a.m. is what we're pushing right now. All the pivoting that we've had to do just to make things right and to keep consistent. So my name is Carvel Monroe, for those of you who don't know, and this is the A+ Coaching Corner. This is year 3, as it says right over my head. Year 3 that I've been at this. It's given me a great opportunity just to remain consistent, to be in front of, hopefully, somebody who needs to hear. You know, we are connected through people. It's kind of helps iron sharpen iron. It helps that blood pump through our veins, just to be in an environment that we could be supported by others, you know, and listen to others. And not just anything, but you have to pick what you pick, you know, make sure you pick what you're getting filled up on. And I like to get filled up on, I don't know, stuff that's going to keep me looking ahead, keep working through the hardships or whatever it is I'm facing, right? I just like that kind of a thing. It works for me, and hopefully it works for you. So today we're in for, I like to say, a good time, a good treat, if you want to call it that. We are live streaming. If you are able to watch it on 3 different ways, like we said. If you're watching it on the website, you will see the information. If you're watching the VOD later, you'll see the same information. But we're going to work through this thing, and it will be done in about an hour, as always, right at about 10 o'clock. So just kind of, you know, just be ready for that. So today we're dealing with what we said is, before I get that too, let me put one more shebanger. I'm going to get out of there. One more peeps before we go. Let's just retweet this baby right here. All right, so let's kind of move through today. This is where we're going. I'm going to be presentation mode today, a little different from last week. I like to keep it fresh. I like to change it up as often as possible. Hopefully that keeps you engaged and we kind of work through the content. So today we're going to go through this vibes right here that I call no takers, right? And the reason why I'm doing this, in case you're wondering, I've had to go through a lot over the years, a lot of different changes, a lot of different, just got to work your way through a lot of different things over the years. It just is what it is. And so a lot of times, even now on social media or just in, whatever circle you roll in, you can encounter a lot of people who are doing things and it's working for them. Or you normally see people at the top of their game, right? People like to show receipts, so to speak, of things that they're doing that's a success. And you can also miss out on the reality that everybody does not take, or everybody doesn't get to the top of the mountain, right? Or they don't start off at the top of the mountain. So what we really want to be able to do is kind of just point to some of the instances where things just don't work. What do you do when things don't work? Let me make one more adjustment, right? So the episode today that you can see here is basically called that. I'm going to shrink my window just a tad bit, just so that everything can be on screen as it should be. All right, so I call this one No Takers. When the world does not want what you have. Yes, it seems kind of strange or strong, but it's true. There are times when what you're doing just does not kind of receive the results that you're looking for. And I know because I've been there, right? I know because I go through this quite often, doing a lot of different things. And all through different seasons or periods of life, you're going to encounter these periods where there are no takers, I call them, where no one seems to take what you want to offer. And let me put it this way, right? And to put it a different way, it says the session focuses on managing the season of life when there are no takers, right? When there are no takers, that means your best effort are not met with the results you hope for. Hopefully that puts it in a clear perspective, right? So your best efforts, and it could be in different areas. And hopefully today I can kind of frame it where you are, right? Because we're all in different places. But I believe this can speak to any one of us today if we are open and true and paying attention, right? So let's kind of set the stage first, right? The target audience. This is very important, right? So who is this for? Let's just kind of work through it. Who is this information for? Right? So if you're looking to transition from a current place that you're in to another, that is one of the target audience members. So if that's you, if you're in a current situation, you're saying, hey, I kind of want to move on up to another place, right? Or to go with that, if you've done enough at one level and you're seeking to advance or you're seeking to move to a higher level, that's something to take note of as well. This is who it's for. So it could be like one of my viewers last week who just finished high school and looking to basically go up a notch. What do they work on? That's what I mean, right? So these are my target audience. You want to utilize more of your skills or your knowledge, right? Some of us, if we're true to ourselves, we realize we're going to find ourselves in different places, no matter how we're working, that all of our skill sets and our knowledge and our expertise is not used, right? It's underutilized. Let's just put it that way. So sometimes we can find ourselves doing something, doing good stuff, doing good work, but also not to the caliber that we can do, or we maybe should be doing at this level. It is very possible to even find success and be in a place where things are good, but they're stagnated, right? You're doing something and maybe you have the benefits of doing that thing, right? Benefits. It could be benefits supplied through a job, or it could just be the benefits of, I know what I'm doing, I'm comfortable in this position, right? All those things though can cannot utilize your gifts and your knowledge, right? And those things can just kind of hold you back in a sense. So if you're there too, that's a part of my target audience. People who have an idea that they want to bring to life. There's another metric we're looking for. If you have an idea that you're trying to bring to life, and it doesn't have to be an idea that, let's just say, it might not be a grand idea at this moment, right? It just might be something that you see, like me, for example. I have an idea, like you can call this A Plus Coaching Corner, is an idea that I've been pushing since 2020, 3 years now. And it's my idea of just providing, and actually kind of goes beyond this, because I really wanted to do a podcast or before all this, and I just had different ideas and just couldn't come up with it until the fall of 2020. I said, this is it. And I decided I will call it the A Plus Coaching Corner. So this is an idea. And so you might have other ideas out there that you're trying to bring to life, right? You want to bring it to the world or to the part of society that you're in or your circle. And so this, if you fall in any one of these categories, I'm here for you. And this message, you can benefit from what is going on here today, correct? Good. Let's look at one more thing here. Who is not intended for? Who is least likely to benefit from this, right? So if things are perfect just the way you want them right now, this is probably not going to be beneficial to you. Because just face it, sometimes when we're very comfortable and nothing is broken, as they say, we don't want to change anything. Sometimes we don't want anything changed. We're good, we're comfortable, and that can make us shut down new information. We can often just shut down new information because we're saying, I don't want to change. I don't want anything different right now. I'm good as I am, right? You might have been there before. It's okay. I've been there too, probably in some extent, right? Where I don't want change. I don't want anything different. So I put the other two up here. You're bothered or you're distracted by surface level things, right? Surface level things. So there might just be some simple things right now that's turning you off. It's probably not going to work out for you, right? Let's just say that. Or if you believe you have all the answers, that's probably, you're not necessarily going to benefit from this today, right? So I'm just taking my time this week to kind of slow it down a little bit, to kind of bring you into perspective and bring you into where we need, I think you can do best, right? So to speak, because we want people to be able to benefit from any learning experience. And so this could be this today, but it could also be anything else, anytime you encounter or you get into a learning scenario, right? You want to make sure you're in the right perspective, the right frame of mind to be able to benefit from what is being offered. So let's kind of keep this thing rolling in now just a little bit, right? So we said all that. Sam Chan has this saying, you can look him up. He says, proper people placement prevents problems, right? Proper people placement prevents problems. So what I really wanted to do by just taking my time today to go through my target audience, just in case you're scooping by or you tune in, and you know, it takes a little alignment sometimes mentally just to be there, because this is not one of those sessions, even though we tweeted it out on the C-Scope Twitter page to say, hey, this is what this session's about. Sometimes people kind of scoot through, and we want to make sure they're properly aligned, right? And we want to make sure they know what they're in for. And so if you find yourself in any one of those places today, you are gonna do well, or you're gonna benefit from what's going on, right? So let's get into what we are gonna do today. We wanted to help people navigate this period of time when we say there are no takers, when you are putting forth your best effort and it just seems as if nobody wants what you're having, nobody wants what you're selling, so to speak. So have you ever submitted a job application, for example, or you interviewed and you was not selected? You were not selected for the position, right? So if you understand this is kind of an idea, just one idea to kind of show you that it's oftentimes we can get the no or the no response, or either one. Sometimes it's a no response, or sometimes you're just not selected. Now, this is just one area. We're going to go down a little bit because I want to make sure I kind of tap into you. So if that was you, take a moment and just kind of write in the chat if that was you and how are you responding if you're live. And if not, just kind of think to yourself, how did you respond? And you might say, gee, no big deal. I applied for a position, I didn't get it, and I just bounced it off and I just applied for another. Or maybe you took it a little step further. Maybe you really thought it was for you, and so just getting no response or not getting the response you were looking for probably sent you down kind of like a place of thinking, deeper thought and reflection, and you started to think, man, I really thought that was for me. I really thought I had that thing. What happened there, right? So it's not all surfacey for all of us. Some of us go a little deeper, especially when we just don't get the outcome we're looking for, correct? All right. So we are literally trying to work through some of these things. All right. So it doesn't have to be just a job. Here's some examples. I try to put them in these areas. So it could be an attraction. You could have put yourself out there to someone and you told them you were interested in being more than friends. Have you ever done that? I've been there. And at some point in your life, you may be there too. You might show your feelings. You might put your cards on the table, so to speak. You might just have a friend or be in a group of friends, and there's someone in there that you kind of like, and you want to make it more than just friends. And you come to the point where you say, hey, I'm really into you, or, whatever term you want to use to express, you're feeling that person a little bit more than just a friendship thing, right? And you can put yourself out there and you may not get the response you're looking for, right? So there's a level of attraction that just to kind of put it in some sort of space. Here's another one. We talk about the application where you applied for something and you were pitched an idea, you applied for something, you didn't get it. But we also want to talk about, you could also propose something, right? You can also pitch an idea and you have no traction from it. That's also another thing where you don't get selected, so to speak. I'm just taking my time here to lay this down. And here's one more. You're selling, but nobody is buying, right? And when we say you're selling, we can put a few more categories in here. You could be pitching a vision that nobody is looking for. I recently went to I have several product lines that I'm pushing. One of the product lines that I'm pushing pertains to parents who are homeschooling, and it's been an incredible journey so far. It's like a big learning curve, but it's also trying to get into a market that's already saturated, and also just one that I don't have a presence in. So as I'm building that, a lot of this also gives me a lot of feedback, and I'll get into that later. So in that space, I am putting a vision out there. I'm selling an idea, I'm selling a product, but not necessarily receiving the feedback or the responses that I'm looking for. And there's a lot of good that's taken place, but not the official transaction that I'm looking for. And I'm going to talk about that too. So these are the ideas that I'm saying, right? And this is very important because getting more than you have, let me say it this way, getting more than you have, going further than you have gone, can take longer than you expect. Getting more than you have, going further than you have gone, can take longer than you expect. That's very important to know. It's not this overnight sensation sometimes. It's not this one and done. It's really not just you getting the very thing you're looking for on the right or on the first attempt. This is important. Every time you're going to do something big, anytime you're going to do something bigger than you, anytime you're going to reach beyond where you are. And if you're saying, look, I'm at a place, or I've been at a place that I've used my skills, I've done as much as I can do, I'm ready to go up another notch, I'm ready to go up another level, you're going to encounter this transition, this move here. But you also need to know that in that time, to get more or to go further, it can take longer than you expect. And that's a reality check, something that we need to do, something that we need to pay attention to. I scout social media a lot, and I see the presentations where people will show you, hey, I went from making this to making that. I went from doing, working over here, and now I'm working over there. Or I stepped out and I launched my thing, And this is where I'm at. And all this is great, but it doesn't mean that they're giving you all the variables that they had to work with. If you remember on the last session, we talked about Nick, the guy with the ice cream discovery he made while he was on a trip in New Zealand. And really, we tried to give you the other side of the coin too. And we tried to extrapolate or pull his story apart a little bit more to look at some of the things, because we realize like it doesn't always just add up as smoothly as people will put it, right? And one of the things we saw the $25,000 that he had, and we talked about, yeah, an 18-year-old with $25,000. Now we know it's not impossible, and we know everyone is not at the same socioeconomic status. We get it. And we know that some people are in positions where they have a little bit more given to them and some have a little less to work with. But the point is that sometimes it's not a quicker journey as people would like to make it. This is why we try to down or push back on the argument of this whole thing of the 30 over 30, the 30 by 30, all that kind of thing that people do to just kind of show you that success can come quickly. And if you're determined, yeah, all that's great. But we also know it can take a little bit more. It can go a little further, and so on and so forth. And so we put that out there to challenge you, but to realize one of the reasons, when you encounter people or the rejection or the no's, it's not all bad. It's just really a period that you're going to have to go through, right? You're going to go through something. And so one of the things we want to do is how can we take a lot of the learning principles from all these different areas and really come up with what I call some universal principles that we can put or we can reflect back on, right? And we can use them as a guide to kind of guide us in those tough times, right? Because how do we feel when we get those rejections? How do we feel when there are no takers, when nobody's picking up what we're putting down, so to speak, right? How do we feel is very important in that time, or how we process all that, because it can literally change the person you are. And we need to kind of go into that. That's why I say here is, how you internalize the pass up. When people say thank you or no thank you, or when they just don't select what you've got, how you internalize all that could be a problem, or it could serve as a promotional piece for you. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, right? So I didn't put my clock up in case you're watching, but we are moving. I didn't even play my rolling intro today. Just a little different vibe. I guess I wanted to get things right, and I kind of overlooked a few things, but I will throw that on you in a moment. So we're still just kind of laying down this thing so you get the idea. There's different areas where you might not get the outlook you're looking for. You might not get what you want, and it kind of lead to different things in your life, right? It leads to a different perspective. So we're going to walk through some of these, and then on the backside, we're going to drill a little bit, right? So let's do this real quickly, and then we'll come back on the other side and do what we need to do. I got to do the formalities here for the sake, and then we're going to dive in just a little bit longer. So bear with me, and let's just kind of chew this up right now. And hopefully if you're taking a little notes, we're going to do that in a moment. So let's do this, and we'll come right back in, and then we're just going to go to work. Yeah, I've been listening to the A+ Coaching Corner with Carvel Monroe. Whether this is your first time or you are a longtime listener, I want to thank you for your attention to this broadcast. So whether you listen live or on demand, it is my hope that by sharing my story and that of my guests, it will help you to shape your story. You've tuned in to the A+ Coaching Corner with yours truly, Carvel Monroe. Here you're going to get VIP coaching that's virtual, interactive, and practical. Listen, I began my life change decades ago, and I'm still pursuing greatness today. I've been involved with mentoring programs since 1999. That's when I won my first award, and I was featured in the Harvard Gazette for volunteering in the Cambridge Public High School. Since then, I've directed multiple mentoring programs on the East Coast. I've owned and operated a decent small business, working with my hands. I have 20 plus years in the marriage game, raising 3 children, and I've supported many others all the way to adulthood. I have taught people facing some tough circumstances, even in the county jail. But today, I am here just for you in the A+ Coaching Corner. Alrighty, let's push right here. So let's push now through a little bit. All right, so quickly, I Googled this real quick before we try to create our own universal thing. I Googled real quickly how to deal with rejection because, after all, when somebody says no, when somebody says, all right, you're kind of cute, but you're not what I'm looking for, or they just basically select someone else, or, your resume was really great, but we went with another candidate. So, or, I love your product, or your product sounds really interesting and the price is just about right. You can have a lot of really great conversations, but in the end, there's no sale, correct? I know this. I've been offering courses online for a moment now, and you don't always get a buy. Or I just recently went to a convention, had some really great conversations, but you don't always get a sale. So I Googled how to deal with rejection just for the fun of it, because it's this generation. We have to Google. And it talks about things like, you got to recognize that rejection is part of your life. Accept what happened. Process your emotions. Treat yourself with compassion. Stay healthy, yada, yada. Don't let rejection define you. That's very important as well. And then it says grow from the experience. So these are some actually good advice. And I like to just pull some things up. This is from betterup.com. You see the citation on there. That's not my stuff. Here's something else I pulled up online. It says there are 5 stages of rejection. You probably heard about this. It talks about denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. There's a whole cycle. I'm not going to break that in. That's in grief.com. Why did I go there? I wanted to look up and just see what I would find on the internet. But I also wanted to create some of my own, and with you, hopefully today, because I like to make it a practical and an interactive experience. So whether you pick it up, I'm going to put a few of my own little pieces that I came up with before looking at anything I saw here actually online. And I want you to try to add to it, because this is very important, because the rejection does come. So one of the things that happen, though, with us, we tend to look at we tend to look at the no's when we're refused differently. We sometimes let it get to us in a way that we shouldn't. So here's the impact when you're refused. I started listing a few of them, right? And it says it can negatively impact what you believe about yourself, right? It can negatively impact what you believe about yourself. That's very important. When you get a no, when you get a situation where somebody's not riding with you, where you get a situation, and I think my camera's about to die. What the what? One moment. Well, it's not going to die. There's a flicker. So today is the day. All right, my camera's not going to die, but it was doing some flickering. Something loose. Don't know why. I never. So today must be the day. All right, we're still on point. Make sure I can hear myself. All right. So let's stay on this. So it can negatively impact what you believe about yourself, right? And I use this story, like, I remember when I was, and I'm gonna use this story of dating, right? Because I remember when I was younger, there was when I was just like 7th grade, 8th grade. I remember there was girls that I liked that didn't necessarily come for me, didn't necessarily respond to me in the way that I would like. That can impact the way I see myself, right? I could think something is wrong with me, and there might have been, right? Or I just talk about my convention or my attempts to make sales. I can look at those things like something is wrong with me, or I can think the worst more than just something is wrong with me. Like things will never change. Things will never get better. Those kinds of things, right? And so it impacts how I believe what I believe about myself. But on top of that too, it can influence what I believe about others. So one of the things that I've seen a lot in our culture, so to speak, sometimes we are quick to say haters, right? We're quick to label everybody as a hater and says, oh, this ain't happening. They don't want to see me shine, or, they don't want to see me, live my best life. Sometimes people do this, and we're quick to grab onto these easy solutions, I call them, these easy answers that say things like that. Like, people just have the worst for me. And we can look at it like that. We can believe others. Everybody's a hater. Everybody just want a crab in a bucket. Everybody wants to hold me back, right? We can think that because when we get passed up, we can think, oh, it's just a man. We can think it's racism. We think it's bias. And it could be. But sometimes we grab the quickest answers, or we believe the worst about others. And I don't necessarily think that's going to give you the best turnaround for your life, right? So we have to also, not trying to say they're not haters, they're not people who wish harm, they're not people who are spiteful, or people who are selfish or close-centered, whatever you want to call it. There are those people, but it can impact us in this way when we're refused, where we think others are always the problem. We can also lose motivation, right? We can lose that drive we have. We can lose that passion we have, especially when it goes on for a long time, as I had in that quote, when it takes longer than we anticipate. When it takes us on a longer journey. Sometimes you want things to turn around last year or last week. And so when it goes on for longer, that can wear you down. And that's perfectly reasonable. I definitely get it and I understand. And so we have to realize all these things can negatively impact us in such a way. Our focus can be broken, where at one moment we were clearly focused on it, but over time we lose momentum, we lose desire, we lose, whatever it is we won't, and we just don't vibe the way we should. And here's another one, and we'll do some Q&A in the end. You can also alter your character. Right? Change your very being, because bitterness can come in, or, you can just take it a whole nother extreme and thinking, well, I'm not aggressive enough, so to speak. It can change the person you are in a sense. Hopefully that makes sense. So you can go from one level to a whole nother level just based on how you are impacted by this. That's one side. Let's look at what I call the positive side of this, right? The pros, so to speak, because there are some pros in this thing, right? It doesn't have to be all bad. So what could possibly be the pros? Well, from one of the articles, you also see that it's a good time to receive feedback on why you were not selected, right? Good feedback on not just why you were not selected, or why such a thing did not work, why your product is not, is not doing the job, right? You can get the feedback on that time. These are some of the pros that I call it. They talk about the MVP, the minimum viable product, right? This is when you get the bare minimum, so to speak, or a product that's not all fancy. The example used often is like the iPhone, one of the earlier iPhones. The earlier iPhones did not come with all the bells and whistles they do today, like your iPhone 14, for example. There are some versions, probably earlier versions, that the camera wasn't that great, or really didn't take pictures, and it didn't have as many apps, and on, or wasn't able to take third-party apps. So you can go on. There's their bare minimum version of the iPhone that was presented. And so listening to customers and getting feedback, so to speak, or whatever further research, they're able to bring forth a better product. So those are some of the pros. It can provide, my second point, an experience that makes room for you. Sometimes when you're not selected, it can provide an experience that makes room for you. I used to often talk about some of the younger girls back in the day who would pass me up or pass up a good guy, and they end up with somebody who literally knocks them over the head, right? Or somebody who might abuse them, or somebody who treats them less than you would treat them. And what does that do? That opens up the door, or it provides them with an experience that makes them go, oh no, and they might start looking in your direction. In the same case, you've heard me share this before as someone who's been involved with construction, right? There's many times that I was brought in on a job that someone else did, right? I was brought in on a job that someone else did. And guess what? When I was brought in on the job that someone else did, people are telling me about some of the problems, right? From the previous person that worked on the job. So sometimes this is what I mean when someone else goes, it can provide an experience that makes for you. Sometimes you need to let other people choose what they choose, and you need to take the rejection, the pass up, right? The not being selected as a good thing, because what it does for you is that person who selects gets an experience that is not you. So I've been brought in on a job where there's been another contractor who did a job that the customer, the homeowner, was not pleased with. And so at somewhere along the line, they either fired that contractor, or they let that contractor go, or they finished one phase of the project and didn't continue. And that made room for me, right? And there's other situations just like that. It could be on a job where someone else was hired. My wife shared with me one time she had applied for this job and it was looking good. And then someone else got brought in who had a contact within the company. And that person who was brought in, for whatever reason, didn't stay very long. It was like 30 or 60 days, and then that person was gone. And guess what? They were offering the job again, and they were offering her the job again. But by that time, she found she got a different promotion, and she said, "Look, I'm good right here. I'm right where I can grow and I can get a little bit more out the deal." So you see what I'm saying about this point here. It can provide an experience that makes room for you. So sometimes let people go ahead and choose, or just accept the pass up as, okay, there's more in it. Sometimes we like to say there's a more divine purpose for you not being selected when you were not selected, right? There's a divine purpose for your product not being accepted when you hope it not being accepted. I always look at it at a time for me to perfect what I'm doing, which can tie into my next point. But the pass up can also does this. It gives you, right? It gives you room and time to be more hardy, I call it, to be more mature, to go through a refinement process, to be more determined, right? All of that works. I was just recently watching, Arnold Schwarzenegger has this movie on Netflix, and he was just showing, not the movie, but the documentary. He was talking about his experience into weightlifting and so on and so forth, right? And one of the things he talked about when he looked forward to winning the first year or something like that, he did not win. But it made him go back and work a little harder. But even before all that, there was times he tried to get in the weightlifting thing and even the acting thing later on, and he was passed up, and it made him go back. It made him more resolute. It made him more determined. It gave him some grit, all those kinds of things. So when we're looking at the season where whatever we're offering is not being picked up, right? No takers. Nobody, it seems like nobody wants what we have. Nobody wants the talent. Nobody wants our advice. That's another thing too. Have you ever given advice that it seems like nobody's taken? And you're like, man, I told them that 3 years ago, or I told them that last week. That happens too. Oftentimes I've heard pastors or leaders will say, people come in for counsel. Counselors will say that too, but they've already made up their mind what they're going to do, right? They don't really come for the information. That's why we try to took our time before we kind of got rolling and set our target audience to say, hey, if you're here, you're probably going to benefit from this information. So oftentimes that refinement process, it does that for you. I've often looked and said, I've shared this advice. I've shared this counsel. Why don't so-and-so respond to what I've said, right? If you have children or have had children, you probably know what I mean. Sometimes your children will not respond to the best advice you offer, no matter how gentle you put it, no matter how careful you lay it down, right? Sometimes all that information is like, you when it comes out your mouth, you're like, whoa, that was good right there, or that was God right there, that's Holy Spirit, right? Sometimes it's that good that when you release it, you think, yep, that's going to be a game changer. And what happens? Nothing. Nothing, no response. You don't see the results you're hoping for. So even in that can falls under the area of what we say you're a proposal, or you're trying to sell something. You're trying to sell a better vision, right? So, but to go through the process of being denied, to go through the process of hearing the no's, or the process of just the rejection, or the process of just not being selected despite your best efforts, it can do this right here. It can let you be more hardy, more resilient. You know what I'm saying? Have a little bit more grit. And so every time I get passed up, I was sharing with somebody, I ran into a store yesterday, and I can probably log into several different employment systems, and you will see how many applications I've sent in to do or to work with a particular company, right? Or and then just from that experience alone, did it stop me from being who I am? Actually, no. It just made me more hardy. It made me more determined, or it made me say, you know what? Okay, I'm going to work on and do what I need to do. And let's throw this next bullet, the last bullet in here about the pros before we try to get these universal principles, right? It's only a few. Let's just throw one more in here. It says, when you get those rejections or you're not selected, you let the market or others grow and mature and come to grips with reality. It's not always about you, although it's part of it is about you. Part of it is you and working on you and getting where you need to be. But there's also the other side where, other people need to come to grips with reality, right? Sometimes they need to kind of grow up, right? Whoever the other party is, like I just shared from a children perspective, right? If I'm putting my best, really golden advice out there and a child will not respond, for example, well, they need to kind of grow and come to grips with reality. So it's not always you. An employer, right? If you ever made a proposal for an employer and they kind of, or not right now, or they just reason it out, or they push back so hard, or they're not willing, sometimes they need to come to grips with reality. I've shared on this platform before about people like your Bill Gates, and I believe who worked for IBM at the time. And if I'm wrong with the information, I'll clear it up next week. But it talk about the Bill Gates experience when he wanted the personal computer and wanted to be it in everybody's home and so on and so forth. He had rejection then, right? So you can put proposals into employers and they don't accept it. And what did he do? He went off and started his own brand. Now, I'm not telling you to run off and start your own whatever, but the idea is just that. Sometimes you can put a proposal in, and even that's rejected. You can work hard on it. I've done that before. I've done proposals to expand or to do something better than what was being done. And it didn't get the open arm embrace like, yeah, let's run with it. That's definitely the thing we want to do, right? It didn't get sucked up. So no matter the space we're talking about, you can have this encounter, right? You can have this encounter. So let's just dive and jump down now and try to do these. Oh, I put these out. I didn't even set them up right. So right on there, I put 5 things down. What I try to create, what I call universal principles, if they did not, that pertain to any area that we talked about, where there's the attraction area, like we said, if you put yourself out there to somebody and you let them know, hey, I like you. I want to be more than friends. I want to go a little further with this, so to speak. And you don't get the response you're looking for. You get a pass up, right? It could be the attraction. It could be a transaction area, like I shared, of me just trying to put a product on the market, me trying to build up my customer base. And while I have a lot of great encounters, I just didn't get the sale. Or we talked about, so that's the attraction. I'll put them back on the screen as I close, but it says the attraction. Oh, there they go. The attraction, application. That's when you submit something and you're looking for what you want and it's not, you're getting the pass up, or the transaction, those 3 areas, right? And so the application, the transaction, the attraction, all these can fall into here. And I said, number 1, you have to listen and reflect internally, right? If you're looking to grow from the experience, you need to listen and reflect on what just happened, right? Listen and reflect on the experience. Just to go back to this point of me at the convention, and I'm working this area and talking to a lot of people. And so one of the things I wanted to do was to put the product on the market to be able to get feedback and see what's going on. And that's my second point, solicit feedback. I was able to talk with people that were there to ask them questions on what would make this better. How would this work? And sometimes not even to ask, but just to hear people talk, they're already giving me clues to what they like about the product, or this is the perfect product. I wish I had this 10 years ago product, stuff like that. So I'm getting feedback. And so it's important for you to talk with people who were there just as well. What do I mean by that? Well, I told you I was talking to a friend yesterday. I haven't seen him in a while. We were in the store and we were sharing about an employment thing. And he's saying how he applied for a job. He had applied for this position and that he already worked there, by the way. He already worked at the company and he applied for a different position and he didn't get selected. And he said one of the things, there was someone there who was actually, I guess, in the room, who was on the interviewing table, who talked with him after and gave him some really good advice and say, look, this is really what happened. You know your stuff, X, Y, and Z, but guess what? You didn't say this, or you didn't express that, or you know what I'm saying? And so when people are who are in the room, people who are present, they're able to give you feedback that is like good, rich, rewarding, meaningful, that kind of stuff that's really going to help take you another level. It's the feedback that you're going to be able to use to up your game so that the next time you can say, okay, based on the feedback I received, this, why, and that. Okay. So it's important to talk to people. That's what I mean. People who are in the room, who were there, who were present, because they're going to give it to you and give you more insight. And so that is kind of like a testing ground. I've done the same thing while I was at the convention. I was able to solicit a lot of information from people who were there, just ask them their input and advice. And guess what? It's all good because that goes back into my data. It goes back into point number 3, where I was able to collect this data and analyze it. Now, look, this is important to know. When you talk to people who were in the room, when you talk to people who were there, when you talk to people who saw what went down, or whatever, it doesn't mean you have to accept everything they've said. You heard me say this before too here. I got this from another pastor, Clayton Clorer, I believe at the time. He said, people are like watermelons, meaning you got to spit out those seeds. There are some things just not going to do you good. So you have to determine what are those things you don't want, or what are those things I don't need to apply. One thing they teach is as instructional designers, whenever you do some sort of evaluation, right, or formative evaluation of some sort on instructional content, right, you're going to get feedback from people, whether you have a test audience or whatever. You get a little feedback from them, and you're going to show them the product, show them a working prototype, so to speak. You're going to demo the product to them, just like they do for those of you on Twitch when they release a new game such as Street Fighter 6. No, they've put that thing on the market to a sample audience ahead of time, and they allow that sample audience to play that game, right? And then they collect data from the game itself, but they probably survey some of them. If you've ever have a Amazon package delivered to your home or anywhere else, you get those surveys, or you go into a hardware store or just about it, you get those surveys. What are they looking for? Information, data, so they can make improvements. But now you can say something about a video game. You can say something about an app. You can say something about a product. You can say something about my interview, right? You can say something about why I was, the girl rejected me. She didn't want me, right? So to speak. Boom. You can say that, but it doesn't mean I have to accept everything you say. My job is to collect that information. I'm going to be open to it. I'm going to get it all in, listen to it, maybe write it down later. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to analyze it. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to say, well, I'm not going to sit here and be all personal and judgmental about it, but I do want to say, well, okay, what good is in this and what isn't so good? What are the things I need to spit out, right? Just like my watermelon. I'm going to eat the good stuff, but the seeds are in there. I don't want to swallow those seeds in the watermelon, right? Those aren't going to do me any good. So it's the same thing. I'm getting my feedback. I got my data. What are the things in here that I want and what I don't want? Plain and simple. You got me? Good. So that's number 3. Number 4, we say now you revise, modify, iterate. I just threw these different words in here so you can get the idea. That means you're going to work on it or work on yourself, right? If I'm doing, so one of the things I do these live streams, if you don't know, it says this on the page, on my Coaching Corner page, live stream, I pitch it out there. A lot of the content, I literally kind of just do a first proposal, dry run. You're getting a prototype from a lot of these things, right? And I put it out here on a high level. Sometimes it's not too deep. I don't go too deep into a point. Sometimes, it's only an hour, so I only go so far with it. And then based on the interaction, the engagement, feedback, all those kinds of things, I might take this and do something more with it, right? There's stuff that I've created that I've used outside of here that's gone further. And so I just use this here. I pitch this here. I present this here. And sometimes it's just like me spitting it out. It gives me an opportunity to think about it. And then it depends on the engagement level or what happens after the fact. Somebody says, hey, I saw that video or I heard that, and they give me a little input. I collect that as data. Now, oftentimes I put a survey out. I haven't done it. I'm not going to do it today either because I just wasn't prepared. I could drop the link in, but I won't bother. You could probably do exclamation point survey if you're on Twitch and it'll pop up, but I won't bother about that. But what I do is I collect and then I go back. So oftentimes this is not my finished product, what you see here. Really, you're going to get something that you can run with for the day and go on. And as you're looking at these universal principles, I want you to add to it. This is not a finished product, like I said. I just summed it down. So you revise. How do you revise? Well, for example, I'm going to use my story about the girl, if she rejected me. I'm going to work on me. I'm going to revise me. I'm going to work on my game, right? I'm going to work on my body. Maybe I'm going to work out. Maybe I don't look as sexy as I want to be, right? I'm going to do all that. I'm going to just revamp me. I'm going to come back. I've been at a company before that I wanted to do some of the things, but I put proposals in, but I also felt like some of the things I didn't get selected for was just maybe I didn't have the qualifications, right? Man looks at that. We know that God doesn't look at that all the time. God will use you. But in the practical world we live in, that world often is going to look at your qualifications. I teach this all the time. I teach it in my own house. I teach it in my circles. You need your paper, which is your certificate, your degree, your credentials, whatever it is for whatever you do, you need your paper. So one of the things you need is that you need your practice. That's your experience. That's what you do to build that part up. And then you need your people, which is your network. That's my phrase I always put out there. Right? So you're modifying you, you're doing all that stuff, you're working on you. So when I've done proposals or ideas for a company that I've worked with, sometimes I didn't get selected and I knew they didn't like certain things, probably because on paper, I didn't have the credentials. It's one of the reasons why I continue to push even in taking formal education. So now as I'm out there, well, I can say I have done graduate level work for if I'm proposing or pitching an idea, or I'm writing a proposal to get a contract. When those people look at me, hopefully they can see not only is this guy passionate, not only is this guy creative or that kind of thing, but he also has the paper that backs him up, right? And so that's part of the strategy. So I put that there to you. That's working on me. And that's one of the ways you're going to work on you. Look at areas that you need to improve. If this was a job situation, you put in a resume, people looked at you, one of the areas you may not get selected is because of this. Maybe you don't have the credentials on paper, right? Some people have the credentials. Maybe it's something about your character. Maybe they don't think you are, or maybe not matter if they think or not. Maybe they want to see that you're persevered. Like we talk about in one of those earlier points, they want to see that you're more hardened, you're more, resilient, you're more willing to go the distance. Some companies or internal positions will want you to apply several times before they will even give you what you're looking for. Am I right? Some of them will make you do it several times before they give you what you're looking for. So you want to make sure that you're willing to be that hardened and to go for what you're looking for, right? So that's what we mean about modifying or do a different iterations. There are sometimes you might put in for a grant or you might put in for a contract or something or a proposal, and they do what they call it is some sort of, I forgot the name right now, inquiry. Basically, you have to provide more information on. So, and basically what that says is you have to go in and maybe address some points you didn't address. or they call you back for a second interview or follow up to say, hey, I'm not sure you said this, but what do you really mean? Or XYZ. Hopefully you get my point with that. But make sure you revise. Don't go back the same way. I used to tell this to my son when he was searching for jobs, like, okay, while you're searching for a job, don't just keep applying the same way. Do what you can to beef up your package, beef up your credentials, beef up your experience, like all those different areas, or even to pull in another person on your reference list that they might go, oh, you're getting a reference from this person? Oh, that person's pretty solid. You get the idea. So you can always revise and revamp no matter what. So when you're getting those no's, when you're in that season, yes, it's not always just you, but it's also the other party. But think about what you can do so that when you get to number 5, when I say put yourself back on the market, that's my 5th point. But when you put yourself back on the market, you're not the same. It's not the same version of you, so to speak. You're putting out another version of yourself, a better version, a stronger version. I'm wiser. I'm smarter. I have more credentials. I have more network. I have more grit, whatever it takes, right? Or I'm better spoken. I don't know what you want to call it, but you get the idea. So these are 5 points that I've put up there, right? That I want each of you can have your own. I'm going to pull out of that real quick now. I'm going to pull out of that. And I want to make sure if you're here, if you're live, if you have some sort of questions, we can get into that, because I just kind of went through my vibe today to make sure I can account for getting everything out. And so in the closing moments, I want you to reflect on some of what I've just shared. And so I try to make this broad enough. Let me try to leave this up on the screen. I try to make it broad enough today so that we can reach you no matter where you were, in a sense. Because most of this getting no's that we get, most of these, I call them getting no's, we all going to go through a period of time. It all depends. And I think when you're going through them, it speaks to the greatness that you have. Yes, I said that right. Because you don't go through these things for no reason. You won't go through a period of hearing no. You won't go through a period where it seems like nobody wants what you have for no reason. You go through these things for a reason. And you got to pay attention to that. Why would I go through this? You're going through it for a bigger purpose. And if you can learn, if you can come away with some of the input we talked about, it's going to be better for you. You're going to come out with the win. I think you only lose when you kind of lose sight of why I'm here or why I went through that, which people it can happen to you. You can lose sight of the why, right? You can lose sight of it. You can be distracted, and you can fall into some of those negative cycles, like the discouragement or the depression or those kind of things. And you may never rise back up because you're not seeing the big picture in it. So I want you to see the big picture. I want you to believe again, and I want you to look beyond where you are. So today, I walk through these things line by line, little by little, just to get people up on to survive in this place. So if you're going through a season where literally it seems as if you're just unwanted, it seems as if your best product, your best offer is just sidelined, you have to make it through this time. When I say you have to make it through this time, because on the other side of this is the joy that you're looking for, right? The success that you're looking for, the outcomes that you're looking for. And that comes about, or that can come about by just paying attention to some of these things that we have right here. Paying attention to some of these universal principles and literally just walking them through, right? Let me listen and reflect, right? And process kind of what I just went through or what I'm going through, right? Let me see what good bits of information I can pull out or I can extract from this experience, right? And literally, if I have to do it systematically, sometimes you got to take time, sit down, treat this as your classroom. One of the things formal education do, they'll set the parameters that forces you to kind of pay attention and to think on something and to process or synthesize what's going on, so to speak, and maybe to create something that demonstrates your learning out of this. Informal experiences or life experience that's happened, sometimes we don't do that. We don't sit down and reflect on it and look and say, you know what, this happened, and I wonder why it happened. And not just pinpoint one reason. I'm not trying to pinpoint one reason. I'm looking at several reasons, because sometimes it's not just one thing. Just like it's not just you, it could be the other person. They often say that some things, it's not that God is working on you, but he's working on them, so to speak, right? Meaning the other party or other people, there's timing. So when these things are happening outside of your traditional classrooms, you got to take the time to do the thinking, to do the reflection, to process, right? And I'm coming to a close here. You have to take the time to do the processing and make sense out of what's going on in your life. And if you can't do that, then you're probably missing important, important things, important nuggets, important truth, important information, because it happens and you just let it go. Now, I do this. I try not to overdo it, but I have to pay attention to what's going on. Why I didn't get it, why a proposal didn't work. I've made I've made a lot of proposals that sometimes I didn't get, and sometimes too people had just some bad practices. I've done proposals that people never even answered me on, even when they talked to me one-on-one about an idea and give me a short time, and I hurried and put something together to kind of show them, hey, this means something to me. Here's some ideas on what I would do, how I would flesh this thing out, just to get the conversation going. And drop ball, no response, no answer, no follow-up, no nothing. So that can happen too. I've been there and I've encountered that, not just one occasion, multiple times, sometimes with the same person. And I say, okay, or the same group, right? The same organization. I say, you know what? Not again. That's my lesson. And so you get better at this actually when you're in these. I can share tons of stories. You get better at this, right? I met this guy one time. I won't go into too much specificity, if I can say that right word, specifics, because I don't want anybody to try to track that person. So I have this product I'm putting out, and this person we met, they seemed very interested in what I was doing. And so they want to set up a follow-up meeting, which we did. But when I went to that meeting, what I did was I trimmed down, sliced and diced the product, and kind of gave you a sample of what the product was, because I wasn't too sure what this person's intent was. And they didn't necessarily give me an impression that they were out for wrongdoing, but I don't know. But see, this is me going through this stuff over and over. This is what it does to you. So I gave just enough of a sample that will show what the product is without giving away all the goodies, if you know what I mean. And so when I made that proposal and gave the follow-up and say, hey, if you like this is where we're going. Guess what happened? Nothing. Drop ball. No response to the follow-up. We were good communicating up until then. Yep. And no hard feelings, and I'm not trying to slander the other person, but it just shows sometimes, like, if there was something more, the treatment wouldn't be this. However, I didn't feel too bad because I didn't put too much out on the table. Just enough, like I would probably do this for anybody, where they can see what is without committing too much. And so one of the things that happen through these experiences too, when we talk about being hardened, right? I talked about that as one of the things on my slide. You can be hardened or be more hardy, more mature, more refined, more determined, more focused. That happens through these experiences. You start to learn the voice you need to learn, right? You pay attention to the voice you need to pay attention to. You don't react or respond too much now by the feelings, because you have a little bit more focus, a little bit more determination, had a little bit more clarity. You know a little bit more than you know now. right? You can create your own systems that work for you, right? So you don't spend time, for example, chasing down. Everybody's not a lead. Some people are just time consuming, draining energy, for example. So you learn that as well, right? You learn that through these times. Like some people fish for information. Some people, they don't fish for information, but some people just, I don't know, they get what they can get. Some people will get what they can get for free. Some people will kind of go the distance with you and get as much as they can. It's kind of like when you walk around, not you, but like someone may walk around the mall and get samples, for example, samples from the food court, have no intention of spending any money, but they'll get all the samples and just fill up or snack on samples and feel as if they've won or out the deal. All right. So it's ideas like that is what I mean. You'll learn out the process. You're going to come out refined. You're going to come out more determined and hardened and focused, more wise out of it. Who's to say that some of the note takers or the season of note takers was not just designed to do that, to grow you up, to mature you on a whole nother level, to prepare you to function on a higher level that you want to go to. Right? I'm just taking my time now to kind of hit that up, but you get the idea of what we're saying. All right. So when you're going through these situations, they have bigger meaning and bigger purpose. And it's very important for you to know. That's all I'm saying. It's very important for you to know bigger, more intense, more meaningful can come out of it at the other side of that. So if you like some of my 5 things right here, I would love to know, add to it. Make it your own so that you can come out on the other side. And just to know why I did this message, I was feeling this about 2 weeks ago, but I reordered it just to do something that happens with me. I have a lot of content that I have, but sometimes I get nudged in a different direction. And so last week I plan on doing this week because I have been in a season myself where it seems like I have no takers. So in case you're wondering, it may have something to do with you. I don't know. It all depends. But this came out of from where I've been. I've been in a season, and I can go back to say from 2020, 3 years, year 3, and I'm not talking about just the coaching corner. I've been presenting a lot of different products out there that all kind of lines up. And when I say no takers, it means the response that I'm looking for is not quite there, nowhere there, right? And so whether it's selling one product to the next, I don't meet the quota. I don't meet the goal. I don't meet the objective, right? And so I'm putting out these things, and sometimes you get no takers. And oftentimes you can get a lot of the people who take stuff for free. They can take the volunteer stuff. They can take, all the things that are for free, but not the stuff that'll pay. And so I put myself in a lot of different circles, and I do a lot. And I learn, but I learn a lot from different areas, from parenting, from fatherhood, from husbandhood. But you can get a lot of note takers, and so as seasons of going through this, I've learned a lot, and so I'm here to help you to say, hey, now that you might find yourself going through, or you will find yourself going through these things, here are some little smidgets that you can run with. All right. That's me for today. Usually what I'm going to do, we're going to get some of these made up into shorts, and they will be on the YouTube page. If you're on YouTube, we're not going to do much on the Twitch page, but they will be on my YouTube. They will be in the YouTube shorts. We put some 1-minute shorts or some 30 second, that 1 minute push I called it. So you can get bits and pieces of this information, and you can do what you need to do with it. All right, so I think we're over the Q&A period, and I'm pretty much done with the segment. I went over a little bit more, but if you had any questions, you can throw them in, and we will make it work. But anyhow, yeah, that's interesting. Thursday next week, we'll be back on. Next week, we will be back on Thursday morning. Work through another Coaching Corner, A+ Coaching Corner session. I still have another topic, but I won't tell you this week because I'm not sure if I'm going to switch it. But join in Thursday, 9 a.m. Wherever you review from, we'll be here.